Could you delve into some of the more advanced techniques and strategies that are taught in the Axia programs that help traders achieve consistent success?
We've been doing it this week actually. We've done a lot on the more advanced stuff, like the macro trading side of things, which I know the guys are quite sort of fried with, but it's something that is massively overlooked it's either overlooked or it's sort of a taboo. Don't trade data, don't trade any of the macro stuff. I think learning even just the basics of why markets react the way they do or how you expect things to react is massively important. Simple approach to these things. Go into it with, before anything, just write down what you think should happen. That way you give yourself the best chance of being able to then, after the fact, look back, okay, my judgment is good. Now I can work on how do I actually execute this? And that's the real basic side of it. We go into a lot more about execution strategy, how to manage those trades. But the basics of it is, firstly, are you getting it right in your idea of what should happen? And then secondly, how do you practically go about executing that? A chart doesn't tell you enough in these situations. You get huge candle, you're like, well, that's easy, you just buy it. The problem is how far up that candle you buying. That's the bit that is all about the execution side. And that's what we spend a lot of time doing.
And it's something that, again, going back to that last video that we spoke about it. Macro was my weakest. What did I call it? My weakest strength at the time, right? And that's how I like to kind of look at things, because it was something that I really, more so, not just for being able to trade it well, but also just understanding the narrative and the story. And it's like, as every single one goes on, and the chats that we have and all the chats that we traders have in the offices, it's great to just kind of have that idea of the story and see how that, how you can kind of delve into that and see what opportunities are there. So
it's a lot about thinking forward, right? It's always that what's the next thing that could happen. If you've got that, you're semi-ready.
Exactly. Now, you've been in the trading world for a significant period of time now.
It's 14 years. No, like longer.
Now, can you discuss it? And I'm sure you've probably seen it evolve many times, but can you discuss the evolution of skills and strategies in trading? As in, like, what skills have been or have had to have been fine-tuned and work now as opposed to maybe when you first started trading?
Okay. So there's a few things, and I hate the blaming the algos game. People love blaming the algos. My view on that is you're making excuses for why you can no longer perform. You can still perform, you've just got to adapt, right? And there's a couple of things that the algos have taken away. Very short-term scalping for ticks. What we call back in the day being a tick monkey, and you literally just tick, 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 tick. That game's gone, because the market making algos are a little bit too quick. But scalping's evolved. To me now, a scalp is what I call a point-to-point trade. You've got a small structure, you've got a level, whatever it is, and you play it to the next point where reasonably you could get some kind of counter trade. That's something you can still do. And if anything, that's a more structured approach now. With the old style of just scalping ticks, that was all about feel. It was about understanding the ladder, which is a far harder thing to learn without just tick, click, 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 clicking around. And so now you've got a lot more structure that you can put around that. It's a similar thing with data. We just spoke about it a little bit, but with, say, data or any kind of macro news, it evolves over time. And you then you become much better at, and it's certainly something that I've learned, to become much better at understanding what's actually really important at the moment and being able to give up certain things. For example, retail sales. Take this back 5-6 years, retail sales was a decent number to trade, and you'd always fancy your chances. At the moment, the market doesn't really react. And so you've then got to sort of assess it and go, do you know, I don't need to be part of this today, but I also know that I really need to be part of CPI. And the approach to trading that can then be really refined down. I think there's a lot that evolves and is sort of cyclical, comes back round. Certain things, the scalping idea, for example, has completely changed. Other things that I've noticed as well is a change in approach to different markets. I definitely have a feeling now that it's much more US centric, most people's approach, than it used to be. Very much more European. Well, you're dependent upon your sort of geographical location. But a lot of that's, in my view, partly to do with the way markets now trade. For example, when I started, I loved the DAX. The way it traded, the flow in the DAX was wonderful. I'd actually suggest it doesn't have that anymore. It's lost it. It's a lot more bitty. And the S&P is now more like what I felt the DAX was like when I started, something that I find very comfortable. And so part of your evolution has got to always be making sure that you're keeping up with every market that's going on or that's moving, and understanding, well, does this work for me? Does this feel right?
Yeah.
And that's always something that's going to help you continue to sort of grow as a trader and evolve as a trader. And a lot of it's environment orientated. Today we've had a load in European markets, and it's been great. Again, all the flows come back, and so that's been good to see. And that's where you've always got those skills that you've learned. Sometimes they just have to go back in the box for a while, and you bring them back out. So they're the big areas that I've seen change, and people's ability to be more fluid in their movement across markets compared to sort of very, I trade this market and that's what I trade, was always the old attitude. You've got to be more fluid now.
And I guess that's where like something that really helps there is like evernoting, right? Or like debriefing. So just having everything there in sequence of where something just doesn't work anymore at the time being doesn't mean it's not going to come back again, right? And some conversations I've had in the Cyprus office as well is kind of like relating to what you're saying now, right? Yeah, you got those skills. You view it as it's skill accumulation. You've got a skill. Whether you use it right now doesn't matter. But once you've got that skill, you know how to do it. It's in your back pocket for the next time you need to use it. Evernote massively helps, or any kind of debrief, journaling sort of software. Anything that you can kind of collate all this information. More and more, I think AI is going to build into that. I'm not somebody who's a huge AI is going to change the world and make me a better trader. It's not going to make you a better trader. But what it will do for you is perhaps give you the ability to spot things that you wouldn't have seen or wouldn't have seen without a huge amount of going back and laborious sort of work, which ultimately, let's be honest, you're not going to do. We can all have those good intentions, but you've got to be realistic. Where I think AI can massively help you is the ability to sort of find a pattern within today that at least you can look for in the future. Also, it gives you a great help in being able to say, do you know what? You're actually good at a day that starts off looking like this. Historically, this is where you're good. So it allows you to have that conviction to push yourself on the right day. Whereas, one of the hardest things in trading is that trust in yourself, that bit in you that says, I fancy this today. And then backing that with actually trading more size. And that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. AI may I think help that. In sort of, this is the day. Go for it. And I think it's something that, because the one thing that I struggled with a lot at the start was, okay, I understood about the debriefing process, but I never understood how I can kind of develop the dots or connect the dots to how I can always access it back, and how is it going to help me looking back? Am I just debriefing for the sake of debriefing? And I think with AI is going to, obviously I've changed my system and I've developed it now to a point where I really understand. Well, I'm always going to be continually understanding it more so, but now I think with this whole thing of AI that you're talking about, that can also help massively with being able to pick out those patterns.
I think that takes the labor side out of it, where I think you're always going to learn from something debrief, whether you're employing AI or not, is almost more the element of going back through them, the sort of review that you do after, say, a week or 2 weeks or a month, whatever it is, that bit of going back through, because then what you're doing, and as much as it's one of these sort of intangibles, there's no way of understanding it so much, but more by going back through the idea. Even if you talked through a trade, by doing that, what you're doing is you're really deeply understanding what's happened, as opposed to just going, okay, well, you could buy it here and you play it to here. That's just like identifying what happened. But if you actually talk it through, or you go back over it on your own and sort of go, right, what could I do here? How would I trade this? How would I hold this trade? Then you get that understanding, right? Well, next time, now I know what to do, even if it's not the exact same trade. And so then what you're doing is you're trying to look for similar skills rather than completely replicable patterns, which is really, really difficult to find. Because as we know, there's no 2 days are the same, no two trades are the same, even if they look the same. That's something I think that's the way you got to approach a debrief.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that I know that, although it's something that I do religiously, the day does not go by because I'm massive on the rituals and the process. It's something that I still keep finding myself just ways of just tweaking it, because again, I want to be able to have it not just, okay, it's great for the process and understanding at the time and the period, but being able to go back and, like you're saying, about having things in your locker or being able to identify things on a different scale. Like I had one, I think it was a week before, where it was a trade that I should have probably got out earlier than I did, and it was like I tried something completely different, which was write my emotional cycle throughout the whole trade, and like pinpointing this is how I was feeling it, and it was just kind of like giving me a different version and assessment. So where the following day, where I was in a almost similar trade, I knew how I felt the previous day because I'd kind of gone into that much detail. So it was, it's always a work in progress.
Yeah, you're aware of it then. Yeah, and it, like you just said, it's an evolution. Yeah, once you know the trade, you don't need to keep on debriefing the same trade. Oh, it's this, and you do this. So you know that.
Yeah.
And then it's that evolution of, okay, well, how do I feel when I do it?
Yeah.
I think anyone's debrief has to evolve. It's just anything in trading is adaptation constantly.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's about your worst strength, if you will, your weakest strength. Get that better, and then move on to the next thing, and step.
Yeah,
that's where I think you've got to approach these things.
Amazing. Now, moving on to a slightly different topic, but still keeping in line, is from your experience, what differentiates the most successful traders from the rest? Are there any specific qualities, strategies, or mindsets that set them apart?
The one thing that probably stands out universally about the best people is they know what they're good at. That's not meant to sort of sound arrogant or overconfident of themselves, but what you got to think about it like any kind of skill set. If you take a sport, for example, a team sport, there's loads of different positions you could play. You've got to work out for yourself, what are you actually good at, what's your best position, and then try and get better and better at that. I think the people who try and be jack of all trades struggle, because they try and, rather than look towards themselves at what they're good at, they look towards other people and go, well, I want to replicate this person and this person and this person and this person. And all those people are very different in the way that they do things. So that's the one thing that I think prevents people from getting there, and one trait of everybody. The other significant trait is approach to risk. Now, the best people are always good at taking risk. It doesn't mean that they are risk takers. I think I need to draw a distinction there. Risk takers are people who fancy it and they're like, oh, I like the idea of this, I'm going for it. That's a risk taker kind of person. What I'm talking more about is people who can understand when the right time is, and within their own skill set. Now, every one of the best traders has this very, very nailed down. They know within their skill set when's the right time to take risks. Now, some of them you could look at and you think, wow, that person takes on huge risk, and they're always involved, but they know how to scale that up and down. And the more active people in that sense of being good at taking risk are able to sort of, they can trade around, and they'll do a little bit, and then they'll ramp it up because they felt that, they can see that the move is on. That's the sort of very active, obvious, good at taking risk person. But then you get the other side of this, and there's a few traders who perhaps fall into the more process side of good at risk taking, who are very clear on what they do. And they're much more structured in terms of, I know this trade inside out, I'm going for it. Those are the people who are good at taking risks, because what they do is they rarely ever expose themselves to any major risks. They don't fall into the trap of, that looks good, oh, that's a nice idea, or trying to trade when their opportunity's gone. They're very good at going, this is it, and you go for it. You go for it big, you hit it hard, and you get out where you've planned to get out. It's a different approach to it, and where their skill really lies is they have the ability to sort of dismiss stuff. I don't need to be part of this. You've got to work out for yourself where you want to be. The people who have that ability to not be part of stuff are the people who protect their downside. They don't have big down days, but they're not constantly printing big up days. And then they'll pull out something special. The people who are much more active, who have a little bit more of a variation in their risk as their edge, are the people who will have those bigger swings, but they'll be able to pull a big day out of relatively little.
Yeah.
And so you've got to work out what you like to be. You know, do you want to be less frequent with a few big hits, or do you want to be always looking for the big one and accepting you're also going to take some big hits?
Yeah.
But either way, it's about that ability to recognize that now's the time.
Yeah.
I think that's the greatest thing that differentiates people.
And when do you think it's best to kind of like start looking at that kind of aspect, like inwardly, right? Like for me, for example, when would I try to, I mean, would you try and actively try and define, or do you try and naturally go, well, I'm actually more better suited to this?
I think probably most people early on will fall into the category of being able to be a little bit more structure process orientated, because you can say, even as a very new trader, there will be certain situations that you could be in where you could say, this is well worth it, and I've got to take the risk on, and that's a little bit more defined. So I think most people start there. Then if you are somebody who finds that they can then say approach more situations and still be willing to take a bit of risk on perhaps more minor trades, and you're comfortable with that, and you can still recognize when those minor ones actually have the legs for the bigger move, then I think you can kind of evolve. And if you never feel that comfortable with that approach, I don't think you should force yourself to be.
Right.
Because it's a discovery process.
Yeah.
But if you start from I know what the trades are that I could go big on, then you've at least got a building block to work from.
Yeah, amazing. That's golden nuggets. I'm making mental notes from
Good stuff
for me. Right. Cool. So for the aspiring traders, obviously all our followers of the channel, and everybody that watches this stuff and is getting into these videos and this journey, what personal habits or mindsets do you believe are crucial for success in trading? Which kind of overlays what we were just talking about. But have you got any advice on maintaining discipline and motivation throughout that process?
I think you have to, particularly let's say from the very, very beginning, you've got to have kind of stages, and you've got to see things in stages and steps towards an end goal. Where I think people make a mistake is they view the beginning as, right, I need to get live and make money as fast as possible. Therefore, I need to prove that I can make money on a sim as fast as possible. Now, that's kind of viewing it in the wrong way, in my view. It's looking at the end before you've actually worked out if you can actually do this. To start with, you've got to treat the sim in particular as a chance to practice. Assume you will lose, and in fact you should be losing more to start with. There's no prizes on a sim for sitting in a trade and waiting for it to come back so you can go, I made 200 quid on the sim today. It doesn't matter. You're better off to just keep on shooting at stuff. By doing that, you see the stuff that doesn't work, you see what it feels like when a trade goes wrong, and so that way you build up through mistake the sort of deduction of, well, this is how you do it. If you take any sport, for example, if I gave somebody a tennis racket, if I gave someone a football, they can't just go and win a match, and that shouldn't be your immediate goal, because you're not going to have a chance. If you just got a new tennis racket and you go and play someone who can play, you've got no chance. You need to then stand there and hit the ball until you can work out how can you consistently hit it. How do you execute certain shots? What technique do you need? That's what I mean when you start on a sim. Pick a skill and just hammer that skill and find out if you can do it, and find out what it looks like when it goes wrong. That would be the first thing. And so part of the mindset is, this is a necessary step to move to the next phase of, now I can implement the stuff that I understand works. The other thing, we talked about this a little while ago, about actually experimenting with different markets. Something it's the first thing I tell people on the career course when we set them up with sim trading. You can trade all of these markets, give them a big list of markets, and I say, right, first week your goal should be do lots of trades and do them across a wide variety of markets, because too much of the time people come into this and they know about a few markets. Yeah, the amount of people are, oh, I've traded Bitcoin, I trade the S&P.
Yeah.
You know, 5-6 years ago it was I trade FX. Go and find out what you like.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this by, you know, oh, I like certain, you know, I like oil, for example. Go and trade something and see if you like the way it moves. You don't know what you like until you've actually experienced it, until you've had a go. So pick at least one market in every asset class and spend, you know, if you give it 2 days and you're right, that's the only thing I'm trading, and get a sense as to whether you like the way it moves. It's far easier to learn how to trade a market that you feel comfortable in than learn to trade something that you feel like you should trade.
Yeah.
It's like with anything, you're always going to learn something better if you're interested, if it feels good for you. You know, I'm sure there's certain things, I can't think of an example, I just don't have any interest in. Golf. I've got a lot of friends who play golf. Oh, I come and play golf. I just don't care because it doesn't grab me. I'm not that interested. If it's football, great. And then I've got an interest in getting better, so I can play more, etc. I think you've got to treat it like that. Go and find out what you like rather than do the thing that most people talk about or say you should trade or you should like. S&P, for example.
This is a prime example of actually what happened to me, because before I came here, I was trying to trade futures, and I knew the S&P. I dabbled in a bit of gold to make myself feel more exotic, to be quite frank with you, right? And that was pretty much it. So when
Shiny.
when I started with the career program, I set up my my setup, and it was mainly just S&P. And then after, I remember, I think you mentioned something like on literally day one about that same thing, and I was like, okay, scrap this. I want to bring up the things that I just don't know, because I kind of thought I knew how S&P moved, which obviously I didn't as much as I thought I did, but I was like, I want to learn how, because everything else moved very, very differently, and I wanted to kind of learn and try and get an understanding of that. So I think that's hugely helpful, I think, for everybody to go into. Now, actually, since we've mentioned the career program, and this is my first time in the London offices in Axia, because I'm in the Cyprus office. It's really great to come and see you in the career program hub, right, in the room setting. It's just kind of like, I saw it from afar, right, on the screens. It's really good to kind of see you do that there. And I mean, when someone wants to, get into that kind of career program, whether it be the 6-week or the 12-month career program, how would they go about it? When is kind of like the next one that's coming up? So how long do they last for?
Two left this year, right. August, and then there will be one starting in mid-October, 20th of October. And then the August one is the second last Monday of August. I think it's the 19th of August.
Yeah.
So the 19th of August. Yeah. It is 6 weeks, as it says on the tin. The whole structure of it is about moving, basically giving people the starting blocks. How to execute some trade on a sim, how to decide what you want to do. Candlesticks. Nice and simple stuff. And then you build on that. That's what trading's about. It's building skill sets. We do candles, we then do profile, we then do order flow. How to actually enact the ideas that you've got. That's the first half. Second half then's the advanced side in terms of the macro trading, how to trade a central bank. We always get everybody to trade one central bank, be that the ECB or the Fed. It's always one of the two. And we'll set everyone up, explain what you can do, what you're looking for, and let people free on it. That's giving that little bit of freedom. So many things nowadays, you're told you can't even trade within 2 minutes of this stuff. No, you want to be able to go and, again, have a go. It's a sim. Go and have a go. Find out what happens on these types of things. So we do that. We do that with data as well. Probably CPI data or payrolls. Let people have a go at it and set them up with a structure as to how to do it. And then the back end of the course, the last couple of weeks, is about how do you bring all that together? How do you sort of develop all of this into a structure as to how you trade on a day-to-day basis, how you debrief, how you develop new ideas, the sort of psychology side of things. I actually think psychology is something that people focus a lot on to start with, which ultimately probably isn't the most important thing. The most important thing when you start is skill acquisition. That's why we're heavily sort of leaning skill side at the beginning, because there's so many steps up the ladder you can take by just getting better at something.
Yeah.
Before the psychology side of, how do I increase my size? How do I deal with a tough run? How do I get off the sim comes into it. So that's something that perhaps then leads you more into the 12-month, which then, you've already assumed that you've got the skill set. And so then it's about advancing the skill set, but then bringing in that structure to actually start to step from sim to genuinely testing yourself on a sim to then live.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of pass through of the whole lot.
Yeah, it's I mean, even in that 6 week, but it's just it's week by week, but it's the tasks as well that you give when you've got all this kind of like interactive moments within it, right? And then ways that you can really kind of learn and develop things on your own as you're going through. And I still go through back through some of my notes when things are coming up, because I need to. It's like it's just constantly refreshing, because those were, like you said, the building blocks, and it's just now fine-tuning them.
Some of the exercises again are worth going back. If you just go back on a sim for a day and have a go at say, it just keeps you sharp. It keeps you sort of practicing those skills like you would in any endeavor. You go and just re-practice the skills. You can do it, but there's no harm in ever just brushing up and practicing a bit more.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Well, I've got loads more questions, but I'm going to leave them for the
next time,
which we know where that's going to be.
Indeed.
Maybe. All right, hopefully.
Maybe in the pool.
That'd
be nice.
With the barbecue going.
Yeah.
But no. So, Richard, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time we've gone through all of this, sharing your expertise and your insights as always. Always those golden nuggets are so useful for myself, but also for everybody that's watching these videos. If any of you guys have any questions, going forward, and topics that you want us to cover, leave them down in the comments below.